Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Secure by Design Beyond the Firewall. This is episode 2, and today we're going to be talking about security. My name is Ted Peters, and with me is Ahmed Kufeshi. Say hi, Ahmed.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So, Ahmed, today, so many businesses today are getting rid of their servers. They're antiquated systems that they've had for 12, 15 years or whatever, sitting in the closet in the back of, you know how it is. And they're moving into the cloud. So, as everything is getting to the cloud, all of our data, customer information, billing, tax information, every little aspect of our business, how do we keep this secure?
Very good question. We touched on it last episode a little bit about how secure is moving to the cloud, because if you remember, we talked about some clients think that because they move their service to the cloud, it's automatically secure and redundant and backed up and taken care of. The truth of the matter is it's not taken care of. It's your responsibility. They're hosting the data for you. They're giving you the tools to manage it, secure it, but they're not securing it. In fact, unfortunately, a lot of the cloud service providers have very minimal security requirements as default. So if somebody who does not know what they're looking for immediately enrolls in a cloud service and start to load their data, by default, all the security features that they have are turned off. So you think it's secure, it's the opposite. You need an expert to go in and make sure all your security features are enabled. If I want to give some examples, if, for example, we're talking about Microsoft 365, you need to make sure that 2FA is not just enabled, enforced. And there's a big difference between enabled and enforced, because it could be enabled by default, but not enforced. And you have a user or two who may skip the 2FA, and the system will allow them to skip it. Or you may enroll them in 2FA, and then at some point, few months later, they just get fed up of it and just disable it and then don't look back. And they don't know better. They're doing their day-to-day job, whether they work at a clinic or work at a law firm. They just want to help their clients. So security is not necessarily their priority when they're thinking. They want to do their job. So let the security of the information be the responsibility of somebody else. Bring it back to an environment like Office 365. 2FA to be enforced is one thing. Then we look at when you move your data to the cloud, it was on your server, it was sitting just at your closet where you have full control over it. Now you moved it all to SharePoint, for example. Did you secure SharePoint? Did you make sure that none of your users have access to send a link to an outside person outside of your organization that give them access to that data? Because sometimes you want to do that. You want to be able to send a folder to a subcontractor that you're working with or a freelance that you're working with, and they want to be able to see that. But mistakes do happen, and if you're not fully aware of what you're sharing, you can share the whole drive and all your data to the freelancer where they don't need that data. And in fact, what we've seen over and over again is that the relationship between the client and that person or the entity that they're dealing with ends after, create a project, few months or even a year, and the relationship ends. However, they don't pull back that link, and that entity continues to have access to all your data. So these are just examples of what, when you move to the cloud, you need to really make sure that that cloud entity is secure and locked, whether it's a dental practice management system, or it's just SharePoint or Google Workspace, or even your books. Like if you move your books from a local and I mean something like QuickBooks, if you're using it locally and now you moved it to the cloud, who did you give access to? Did you give access to your accountant? Did your accountant now give it to all the people who work at that accounting firm? You need to be aware of this.
Well, and that also says, where's the QuickBooks data being stored?
Exactly.
Because
Where
does
is
that
it?
link to your existing things? So, yeah, can see why, having all of those layers of security to protect, I always describe it to people kind of like, when you walk in a building and there's a metal detector and, you have to go through security to make sure that you're secure. This is no different when we're in a device and, having those basic layers just from a access point for like a fob or something, makes it that much more robust.
Yep.
So, you also spoke on our first episode. We spoke a little bit about cloud backup when it comes to your data. When we talked about those customers that everything's in Google, right? And because it's in Google, oh, they got my stuff, but it's not backed up, right? So, what does that look like? How do we get that to happen?
Well, it also depends on the environment that you're in. So if you're in Google and we're looking at backing up your Google email or your Google Drive, there are tools for that, and Google is not going to do it for you. You need to do it, and you need to copy that data somewhere else outside of Google. And the reason being, if your account gets compromised or one of your staff accounts gets compromised, then everything in Google is going to be compromised. If a file gets corrupted, you want the data to be somewhere else that you can get it. And then there's the location of the backup. Organization needs to be aware of where their data is stored at all times. For a lot of businesses, a legal requirement to know what it is, where it is. So for example, if you're dealing with patients' data, if you keep patients' data outside of Canada, you need to get consent from your patient. A lot of businesses don't know that. A lot of clinics don't know that if you keep the data outside of Canada, you need to get consent. So in a lot of cases, it's easier just to keep it in Canada.
And that's entirely because of the laws, right? So if for example, any of us iCloud users, and there's lots of us out there, that data is stored in Raleigh, North Carolina. Apple's pretty transparent about where that data farm is that's storing all of our data. Well, that's in the United States. So that means that data is subject to the rules of the United States of America.
Exactly. The what's important for us is that as the custodian of the data, like most physicians and practitioners are custodians of their patients' data, you need to know where it is. And that's it. If you know and you agree and you're okay with that, then that's your responsibility. But what we encourage people to know, and that's the question is, do you know? And then the next question is, do you care? We have businesses that they say, we don't care.
Sure.
And that's fine. If they're most of the data related to graphic design, advertisement, media, a lot of them don't care. But some of them do. So that's the question we raise, is that, do you know where it is?
Great. Okay, so I guess the last thing I kind of want to talk about on this particular episode when it comes to security is the whole world of, this is going to be a big one, I think, too, the whole world of email and communication and how AI is increasing this, but where we're getting spoofing. We're getting malware in through our emails. The filters that we have to protect it ahead of time. Because, we get those emails. You go to Apple, sometimes you go to the Apple store and you say, I got this email. What should I do with this? And then Apple says, report it to phishing@apple.com and then mark it as junk and delete it. There's got to be more to it than that. Especially from a business perspective, because you sign up for that one costume for curling that one time. And then now you get bombarded with emails by this vendor trying to say, hey, we have other silly costumes for you to use too. Yeah. So, or it's, somebody at 5:40 or 4:45 on a Friday afternoon gets that email and they click on it. So can you speak to this? Because so many businesses have been there recently.
Email is becoming the number one vulnerability for a lot of organizations. It is where users are busy doing their thing. Like I said, if they're doing patient care, if they're legal, or if they're in construction and they're waiting for an important email from somewhere, or they're waiting for a package from Amazon that they needed for their work, or as the holidays are coming, they're waiting for a package for the holidays, and then they become eager and distracted and they just click on the link without actually going through it. So a few years back, a lot of organizations relied on user training, cybersecurity training, and being vigilant, and continue to, tell their staff, be mindful of what you're clicking on, look at the link, hover the mouse over the link to make sure that the link is exactly what it says it is. Unfortunately, in the last year or so, this has not been enough. And the reason it's not enough is because you can't leave your users to fend for themselves. Even if you give them all the training in the world, there's going to be some people who are going to miss it. And then your whole organization is at risk. And that's where nowadays what we're doing is we're putting email filters that actually quarantine some of the emails, remove attachments if needed, even switches those links, those URLs that you click on that takes you to that malicious website. Now it goes through a sandbox. So when you click on it, it goes and checks it for you. Even if you clicked incorrectly, it will give you that message. This is a bad address. Don't go there. So that is now not a luxury. That's now a necessity, that you have to have some sort of email filter that's going to vet things for you. User being vigilant is still very important because there are things that are going to pass. And there's no one solution to everything. It has to be multiple tools that we put in. And that's why we're having those episodes, because it's not one thing. It's several things that we have to deploy and manage and keep up to date to make sure that your data is secure.
And so, like this idea of spoofing, because I remember hearing recently, we know some folks that an email was spoofed, and within no time, something like 455 emails were sent out from that person. And what's that kind of thing. And AI is now coming into this. So how is that going to play into that kind of, going past these filters and past our eyes even as training? In the past, one of the techniques people used to deploy to make sure that this is the real email is, like, they say, look for spelling mistakes or look for grammar mistakes. That means that email is not right. Or even look for the graphic. That does it look like it's coming from Microsoft, or no, it doesn't. This, when it was made by hand, this is when you had, let's say, bad actors trying to mimic an email from Microsoft to make it look like a Microsoft. And, they're human. They make a mistake. Sure.
They put a comma in the wrong space, or there's a spelling mistake because maybe English is not their first language, and that's how we used to catch it. Now when it's done with AI, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You can tell AI to mimic that Microsoft email that tells you to reset your password. So good, better than any human can.
Yeah.
And that is where the danger is. In addition to that, when you tell AI to find vulnerabilities in companies, it's going to go and get it for you, versus when you had humans going and finding vulnerabilities and sending emails to people. Now, the amount of emails are going out trying to get people to click on a link, all made by AI, is so easy, and it's way more than it used to be.
Yeah, it's only going to get.
It's going to get better, and it's going to be be more accurate, and
it's going
to get more difficult to catch. For
yeah,
sure.
so really, this all just becomes so that much more important for a business to survive, is to be able to stay vigilant with all these things and try and stay ahead of the curve as much as we can for as long as we can.
And that's what we're doing. Like every month, we look at new products. We, as service providers, we're looking. This week, I had 2 demos of products that does phishing and spam catching, basically a system for email. We're looking at that. We're looking at securing. We're looking at different products to educate users. So it's constantly on the go. As the bad actors are constantly looking for tools to make theirs better, we have to constantly look at. And we're doing that. Our tools are changing. The things that we did last year is very different than what we're doing today.
Yeah. And see, that's why it's so important to have an MSP for your small and medium business, is because you may not have the time to do all of that yourself, like what we were talking about last time with why managed services. It's how do you as a business owner stay on top of running your business, making profit, having growth, setting, ambitious plans for the business, and then also have to do, and by the way, I also have to be an IT expert and make sure I'm staying up to date with AI. And how fast it's going. There's no way that could be done. So anyway, great chat today. Security, and especially cloud security. You're moving from the old hard drives into the cloud. You got to think about all these things. Thanks, Ahmed, for shedding all this light.
You're welcome.
So with that, everybody, we're going to say sayonara. Today, I'm going to go Japanese,
There you go.
Sayonara, everybody. And we'll see you next time here on Secure by Design Beyond the Firewall.